Hello, thanks for joining today. Tamil Nadu Dynamics 365 Power Platform and Agent meetup. This month we have Anita Ishwaran joining all from UK. So she's a Microsoft MVP and MCT, and she has a plethora of experience in AI, integration, Power Platform, M365. And today she's going to present us about, and she cleared the exam AB 900, and she's going to give us lots of information and guidelines and tips about the exam, how to and what to expect in the exam as such. So without further ado, I will just pass it to Anita to take it from there. Hi, Anita.
Hi, Jeevan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joined here. Thank you, Jeevan. Thanks a lot. I hope you are doing good. I think, am I audible? Is my voice clear?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeevan. I hope you are all doing good. Thanks again for joining the session in your busy weekend schedule. Thanks to Jeevan, Dharani, and the Tamil Nadu Power Platform group for hosting me in this show to share my knowledge on the certification preparation. Just a quick intro about me. Myself, Anita Ishwaran. So I am a D365 F&O technical architect. I am into this dynamics world for 20 years, almost 20 years. And I am from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Happy to meet you all here. This is my LinkedIn profile. I have also started the blog, which is 10 years old, where I have shared all the learnings and my part of my journey, whatever I have learned, I used to share it in my blog, which is it's running for almost 10 years successfully by God's grace. And I have also have the newsletter here, which all the details are given in the LinkedIn profile. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I am into the MVP journey for almost 2 years. And recently I have also attempted for the Copilot, the beta exams, which gave me a good idea on how to prepare for the Copilot examinations. So all these details are also in my LinkedIn newsletter, where I have shared what are all the different certifications we have in recently, which Microsoft has introduced. So without further delay, okay, let me just turn off my video so that I won't have any internet issues. I will be back on the video after the session. I hope that is fine with you. Okay. So today, the agenda of today is, let us just go through what is this MS Learn study guide, like just a quick tips on how to use the study guide, and how to explore the Microsoft 365 administration. And these are all the two main modules which are all a part of the AB 900 series. So I will give a brief walkthrough of what each of these modules and the lessons inside this. So first, let us go to the study guide. So if you go to study guide, you can search for AB 900 Microsoft Learn, and that would take you to the study guide. So my advice is, always refer to the study guide whenever before preparing for the exams. So that would give you an idea of what are all the skills you need to. It will help you to attempt on this exams. You can do on this exams, and what are all the skills measured, and what percentage of the questions which are covered in each topic. So if you see, this is the study guide for AB 900. And the skills measured are also given, the audience profile. So at least what are all the basic prerequisites you should have before attempting this exam, and what are all the skills you need to understand, you need to familiarize yourself when you are going to present for this exam. For instance, here if you see 30 to 35% of the Microsoft services, either the core features and the objects of the Microsoft 365 services are present here. It covers almost 30 to 35% of the exam. And if you see the security principles, it covers the security principles. And then what about the features and the capabilities of Microsoft Defender XDR? I hope these are all the familiar terms with which you would have already known now. Microsoft Defender, Purview, and what are the security features. So all these are all in the study guide. So I advise you to go through the study guide, get familiarized to yourself what are all you need to prepare for each topic, And then that would give you a good idea on how to prepare for this exam. Over to the slide. Okay. So, and also I wanted to tell you about the course. So here we have two main modules, the two learning path. One is exploring 365 administration. So if you see this Microsoft 365 administration, we have three modules in this learning path, which covers about the security foundations, core services and admin controls, and how do you protect and govern the 365 data. So these and all are important, which are covered under the first one, exploring the 365 administration. So this comes under the administration area. And the next one is managing the Copilot and agent administration. So here we will learn about how to explore how do you do with the Microsoft 365 Copilot and agents, and what are the basic administrative tasks, a basic task at least, so you can familiarize yourself with the Microsoft 365 Copilot administrative task and also with the agents. So this learning path covers the agent topics, and the first learning path covers the administration topic. So going back to our slide, so first let us go with the introduction to Microsoft 365 core services and admin controls. What is this Microsoft 365 ecosystem? So if you see in this diagram, let me hide it. Okay. There are 5 layers, the security layers. There are 5 layers present in this Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So this did not mean the sequence. So at the heart of this architecture, the Copilot acts as an intelligent orchestrator. For example, it surfaces the relevant information and, for instance, automates the task, and it also enhances the productivity across the Microsoft 365 suite. So inside these layers, the heart of this architecture is the Microsoft 365 Copilot. So first, what is identity layer? For instance, you would have heard the term Microsoft Entra ID, right? It was called as Azure Active Directory, AAD. So it provides authentication, authorization, and, for instance, conditional access and identity protection. So this comes under the identity layer. And the next one is security layer. So for instance, of course, so you cannot expose all the data or whatever the information is asked for, correct? So here you have in the security layer, you have the compliance, the unified tools for the data loss protection, which we call as DLP. It's called DLP, the data loss protection, and the e-discovery and the retention and the auditing. So this comes under the security layer. And the next is service layer. What is service layer? So you would have heard the terms, you will be familiar anyway with the terms Microsoft Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Copilot. They all operate here. These are all the core services in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So each service, what are these services like Microsoft Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and this Copilot? They all integrate with the Copilot features. So what happens? The user the interaction and the productivity will be enhanced. And the next is intelligence layer. So how do we get the personalized assistance experience? That is a part of the intelligence layer. So Copilot and the AI agents, the AI powered agents, they utilize the data and the signal across the various 365, and they deliver us the personalized assistance and the recommendation and automation here. So this comes under the intelligence layer. Finally, the data layer. So of course, so this comes via the Microsoft Graph. It plays an important role here. It connects the data across the services, enabling the insights like an automation. So it is empowering the Copilot contextual intelligence. So here, this is where it connects the data. So if they want to fetch the relevant data across the various services, for instance, if you are asking the Copilot to summarize the team meeting, so it will immediately go to the Teams meeting, that Microsoft Teams, and then it will fetch you the relevant information. So this and all, it comes under the data layer. So at the heart of this architecture, you see in the middle, it comes the Microsoft 365 Copilot. So it is an intelligent orchestrator. So we call it as an orchestrator here because it surfaces the relevant information and it also does the automation of the task, and thus it enhances the productivity across the Microsoft 365 suite. And so for instance, again coming to the same point, so all this Microsoft 365 core collaboration services, for instance, the Exchange Online, the Teams, and the SharePoint Online, they are all essential. They work together. It is not in a single mode. So they all work together. So it is enabling a secure and efficient and seamless communication and teamwork across the organization. So for instance, what would, in case of Exchange, it will handle the email and the calendaring and the mail flow for us. And of course, the SharePoint, it comes for the document management, then the team collaboration. So if you want to share some document across the team, the SharePoint comes into picture here, and where you can also keep the access secured by giving only the access to the relevant users and not to everybody in the organization. So all these are also taken care by the SharePoint administration. And also for the teams, in case of teams, you can organize the calls, meetings, and then you can summarize using the Copilot. All these are also available. So how do you establish the security in case if you are using all this? So all these core services with us, so how do you establish the compliance foundations? So there are few things which are listed here. For instance, the device access policies. So because here we can ensure the device from which the service is going to be connected is also compliant. For instance, we can give the app protection policies. We can configure the device compliance policies. We can also have the conditional access policies based on the device state. For instance, if your device is not compliant or it is not updated with the latest security, then we need to stop abort the access. So there are no more access given here. And conditional access policy, for instance, we can target for the user and group target. Like the access is given only for a particular user or a group. I mean, giving for each user might be a little bit cumbersome, but in case of a group, where you can define the policies there, like this is what for this particular group, these are all the set of policies which are assigned. And also when there's the sign-in risk evaluation, whether the signing for a particular user is from multiple location at the given time, then that is a sign of alert, correct? So that has to be the evaluate. We need to sign in risk. And also the session control, not like you can stop the session as soon as the particular task is done. So all these conditional access policies can also be implemented. Content protection policies. So what is content? As you know, it comes with the data. We can not all the data to be exposed, correct? For instance, the data of the personal data, like the date of birth or the social security number in case of BRP number. So all these they need to be protected, correct? So in this case, we can give us sensitivity labels. So we can give up sensitivity labels. So based on the sensitivity label, for it is high, medium, or low. So based on the sensitivity labels, the content will be extracted. And you can also bring the data loss prevention. So because not all the data to be exposed again. So here also we can give it, not all the data should be transmitted. For instance, a file containing the credit card number details should not be sent across the email. So all these data loss policies also should be implemented. Retention policies. For instance, after few months or for instance, a file need not be it comes in the life cycle management. You don't need to keep a file forever in the storage. So after a few days or after a few months or after the particular complaint or the audit is done, for instance, that can be either deleted or it can be archived. So it need not be under our radar. And the policy monitoring and deployment. So what are all the policies you can deploy and what are via the Purview portal? We have Microsoft Entra Admin Center. I will show this in the coming slides, how we can access the Microsoft Admin Center and how the core services are defined in the Admin Center. So with all this, can start with the pilot group. Like since as the same like how we do it for a project, you are not going to start immediately for the entire wider audience. You can start with the pilot group to validate the policies before we roll out. So we can understand where the gaps are, whether they have a proper sign-in policies set in. If the device is not compliant, are they able to get the notification or whether their access is blocked? So we can start with the pilot group here. And also we can use the inbuilt template for the DLP. DLP is data loss protection and the conditional access. Regularly, we need to review the audit log as well. So this is not a one-time activity. So it keeps every week. Weekly audit logs also has to be done or if it is a very secured project, then daily audit log has to be done. How many how the audit, what are the users signed in, if the user is absent today, whether the signing is happening. All these audit logs and the policy reports should be done regularly. Okay, so again, the conditional access policy, it comes with the role-based access control. So RBAC, we call it as RBAC. As you all know, a role is a permission to do a task. Right? For instance, if you are a payment, if you are an accountant, your role is to only post the payment or create a payment. You don't have access to post the payment. So it is like a permission to do a task. So then a role group, it contains one or more roles, and where you have a group of roles which is attached to a role group. So, and even a user or a user group can also be added to the role group. So that is what this particular diagram suggests. So once added, so it, rather than giving the permission to each user, which can be very difficult to even maintain as well, right? So it is very difficult to go and check what each user is having the permission. Rather, if the user is assigned to a user group, and in turn, if the user group is mapped to a role group, then it will be easy to maintain as well. So it is easy to consume the roles group permission here. So here comes the role-based access control. What role-based access control does for us? It provides a structural approach. Like, it's a kind of structural approach where you are distributing the responsibilities, and we are ensuring that only administrator has the permission to do the necessary task. So it is like it follows the least privilege principle. What is least privilege? Nothing more or nothing less, which means only user and admins are granted access whatever to the users, whatever they need. There is no extra, there is no less. Okay, so the advantage of the least privilege principle is it minimizes the risk of accidental or the malicious changes. So if you are giving over control, over privilege to a particular user, and if the data is corrupted in that file, then it is an accidental change, right? It's a risk. So you can minimize such risk. And also it helps the organization to meet the compliance requirements. And so via this, it is not necessarily only you need to use the standard role. We can also define the custom role if they give you the more granular control. So that's the Microsoft 365. It provides a comprehensive set of admin roles. So they are tailored to specific administrative functions. And these rules, they mostly cover the permission scenarios. So now let us walk through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So this is the Admin Center. So if you type in the browser Microsoft 365 Admin Center, that takes you to this page, and you can have a proper Microsoft Office license, and we will be able to log into this page. As soon as you go to the home page, you can customize the navigation here. You can customize what are all you need to display here. So this and all can be done. And if you go to the Copilot, so here you will be what are all the Copilot, what is the security, what we have in the Copilot, the data lakes, all this recommendation we can see. And what are all the connectors? If you want to add your new connection, you can add, and you have the gallery here where you have a different types of categories we have for each connector. And obviously what is the billing and usage and the settings. So here you have the user access. So what is the user access each we can give, and also the data access. Okay, so these are all in case if there are any, for instance, whether it is compliant to the organization policy or not, all this can be set up here. So this covers this Copilot menu, and here you have all the agents. So what are all the agents we have? If you have created a custom agent, and how do you publish it, all this comes under this agent menu. And I told you about the users, correct? So here, who are all the active users? As of now, I am the only active user here. And if you want to add any user, you can send, and then you can send it to the invitation to the guest user as a guest user here. And if the deleted users who are deleted recently, they can also be tracked here. Teams and groups. So for instance, I told you that this can be done for a particular user or particular groups, right? So if you want, this can be also done here. Just you should get familiarized. Just give the hands-on with this Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Just browse all these menus, so you will understand. At least you will get an idea what are each role, what is the each menu is going to do. Just at least you don't need to go into detail. So where are these roles present? How do you assign this role to a particular user? All this can be given a try here when you log on to this Microsoft Admin Center. Here is the role assignment. So these are all the standard roles. So in case if you want to have your own role, so that can also be done. So these are all the standard roles. If you see, if you can assign a role to the user and to a new user as a billing administrator, so where he manages only the request and the service health, not more than that. So all this we can do it here. And if you come to the resources, marketplace, billing, you have a billing, what are all the billing notifications? And if you come to the settings, here also you have, and in the security policy, you have baseline security mode. Here that will give you if there are any attacks. So what are all the policies which are already applied here for each of these centers, the services. This can be done using the Microsoft, the baseline security mode. And yes, coming to the main one, the admin centers. So if you recollect, I have told you about the core services in Microsoft 365, right? So you can see the list, they are all listed under this Microsoft 365 Admin Center. For example, you have the Admin Center for Exchange, where you can set up the policies where whether it has to go to the shared mailbox, or for instance, you have a shared mailbox, right? Whether if there is a support team where the shared mailbox can be created and the particular support team can access that mailbox, shared mailbox. So all this can be configured here, and even you can check. We can monitor how regularly, whether there is a overflow of the emails during a particular time, and if there is any alert to be set. All these can be set in the admin center. So if you see, this is under the admin center, and here you have the SharePoint admin center. Obvious, of course, I told it is for managing the documents. So all these core services are listed under this admin center, Microsoft 365 admin center. And you can go back to the admin center at any point of time, even for the purview, all this from here, you can go Power Platform admin center and Exchange admin center, the Microsoft purview admin center. So here you can understand what are all say the agents, how it is, what are the solutions, any security threat are there. If you want to manage the data lifecycle management, all this can be set up in the preview. So I suggest you to get some idea, familiarize yourself with this particular menu. Just go through and understand what each menu does. So it will be easy for you when you read the theory from the courseware, the Microsoft courseware. Now going back to our slide. So here I have given a walkthrough of Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So this covers the module 1. So as of now, we have 3 modules. We have 2 modules, the 2 learning parts, right? In the first learning part, we have covered the module 1. So what we have learned, we understood what is Microsoft 365 ecosystem and the admin center and the key admin tools and the collaboration services, the core services, what I meant. And how do you, the Microsoft 365, the identity and the compliance foundation, how it is covered. And how do we assign the admin roles using the RBAC, the role-based access control. The next module is the Microsoft 365 Security Foundation. Okay, so why are we having, so here it operates on the principle of zero trust. When you compare the conventional security approach, it is like all the attacks were network based because they were very simple, and because the security is very low within the network. And but now our assets are with a hybrid working model, and our assets are leaving the network. For instance, you are going to operate from the office, or you are working from home, or you are working from your connecting to your hotel Wi-Fi. So all this, our assets are leaving the network increasingly. So this makes easy for the attackers to shift to their identity attacks. For instance, they can take the phishing or the credential theft, and all these are overwhelmed here. So we need to keep the assets away from the attackers. So that is why there is a this is a zero trust policy. So what does it do? It verifies everything explicitly. So whatever you receive a request, it has to be authenticated or authorized. So what is authentication and authorization? I will tell you in detail in the coming slides. And the least privileged access. So as usual, nothing more, nothing less. So only grant you the users where the minimum level of access to perform this task. And it is always assuming the breach, which means that, see how the traditional security is thinking is reliable, is relying on all the requests which is coming to it. But here in the zero trust security model, it will always assume the breach, which means that rather than the prevention, it is coming to the containment. So because everything it assumes that attackers are already in the network or they're trying to get it. So this is what the zero trust security model does. So how do you implement the zero trust in Microsoft 365? So if you see, these are all the main pillars in the Microsoft 365 core system. One is the identity, Microsoft Entra ID, and where it protects via the Microsoft Defender for identity. The endpoints, for instance, endpoint is any device, whatever you are going to connect. You are going to connect any device, or you are going to connect via the user ID, your email, any endpoint from where you are establishing the connection to the system. And applications, the data is also one of the main pillar here, the infrastructure and the network. So what happens here is these are all the 6 phases of zero trust implementation. It is not as I said, it is not a one-time configuration. It has to be continuously evaluated, right? So you need to assess the current security posture regularly, and we need to see if there are any reports which are of the high alert, all this. And we need to also enable the identity protection. So not all the users who are sending the request for the getting the access should not be entertained. They need to verify explicitly. They need to be authorized and authenticated, and then only they need to be given the access. And also we need to enforce the endpoint compliance. What is endpoint compliance? For instance, if you are connecting via a laptop or a desktop from your office, if your desktop is not up to the date with the security, then the Microsoft 365 policy can be configured to block the access. Unless you upgrade the latest security updates, then the access will not be granted. And you can also classify or protect the data. For instance, if you want, not all the data are to be shared, correct? For instance, the personal information about an individual should not be transferred via an email, or it should not be like it has to be like a sensitive label can be given. So you need to classify which data is sensitive, which is least sensitive, which is highly sensitive. And we need to also monitor and respond to threat. So we keep monitoring every day. So regular audits, it is a regular audit is different, but monitoring every day, every second is needed here. So all this, it comes under the threat intelligence and telemetry. So we also need to educate the users in order to understand how this Microsoft 365 works, because now we need to educate the users. Hey, you can update your laptop with the latest security patch, which is already available in your system. You should be getting an alert. Take action on it. And hey, you don't send this sensitive information, because this has a credit card information for all the users. You should not send it across an email, because there is a possibility of a credential, because there is a possibility of hacking. So in this way, we need to educate the users here. And that is how the zero trust can be implemented. So if you examine the threat protection, so Microsoft Threat Intelligence comes here. For instance, Microsoft 365, this is not a single tool. As I said earlier, this is a suite of tools, a collection of tools that work in concert to detect, integrate, investigate, and respond to the threats. So for instance, the threat can be across, even it comes via an email, or it can come as an identity, or it can come as from an application. So it has to respond to the threat which is coming from all the directions, right? So these are all the set of suites. And if you see the Microsoft Defender suite, what we usually do, Microsoft Defender suite is for the, if I have here, one moment. Okay, Microsoft Defender for XDR suite, it will coordinate the detection, and it will also prevent, investigate, and response across the Microsoft 365 services. And what the Purview does, because it is like, for instance, Purview is also not going to act independently. It will integrate with the XDR, the Defender XDR suite, for security investigations and the insider risk management. So these tools, they don't work independently, but they work in collaboration with the other tools here. So here, then in between, it comes the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center, because it collects and it analyzes. So if you see, there are so many threats or identity threats which are all happening across the system. So it collects and analyzes and disseminates the threat intelligence from various array of sources. And if you don't believe, it will be like, it will monitor almost 65 trillion signals every day. 65 trillion signals. So it also identifies the threats, the emerging threats. For instance, it can even expect, okay, I am suspecting something in the user login. So it will also identify if there is an emerging threat, or it can also provide a timely intelligence to the Microsoft 365 customers. So identity and authentication. So here the identity, and so here only the ensures the right people and the machines and the software components, they get right access to the right resource at the right time. Okay, only the right people, right devices, which are machines, and the right software components, they get access to the right resources at the same time. So this plays a role here. Identity, authentication, and they form the backbone of how this access are granted. Like in the cloud services, identity, authentication, and the single sign-on. So identity means what? It will, sorry. So identity means it will answer the question, who is this person, or who is this device, or the service which is trying to access your Microsoft 365. So for instance, it will include the username, or the permissions, whatever the group has, and or even the password. So all these are all the identity and authentication. And these identities can be cloud, also hybrid. So next is the authentication. And here that would answer the question, how do we prove, or how you need to prove yourself you are an authenticated user, correct? That is what the authentication means. So how do we prove who they are and what they do? So for instance, here the enhanced authentication approaches includes the multi-factor authentication. For instance, you are familiar with the MFA, right? Where you, after you enter a password, you get one more additional security this thing to your mobile, where you would have installed the authenticator, where you need to confirm the code. So this is one more way of authentication. So for instance, you have the self-service password reset and the MFA. So here what happens during this multi-factor authentication, it is mainly for the hybrid environment. For instance, you can use the password through authentication or a single sign-on. So what is the purpose of single sign-on here? So users, once they get access, once they sign in, they get access to all the Microsoft 365 services which they are eligible for. So for instance, if they don't have access to the SharePoint, they will not be able to log in. But if they have access to the Teams or the Exchange, then they will be able to log in using a single sign-on. Not every time, whenever you log into your the Exchange or the Outlook or the Teams, you don't need to ask for the password every time. So it is called as single sign-on. Okay, so this is how we are managing the access. So to simplify the permission management, so as usual, it is just a repetition. What are the users group, such as users and users group? So a user, it represents, for instance, a user is verified through an authentication. So it represents an individual identity. So in case of groups, it allows, if you are giving us a group permission, then it can assign the permission to multiple users at once. So what advantage in this case is the maintenance will be less, there will be less overhead, and it will also reduce the complexity, and it will improve the consistency. For instance, there are so many groups, security group you have, where and then Microsoft 365 groups, mail enabled security group, distribution group, and dynamics group. So they can be given you via access via this conditional access, or the privilege access management, or the access packages, or the information protection and the sensitivity labels. So how this group membership works. Now coming to the conditional access. For instance, the Microsoft, it dynamically applies the rules based on the sign-in risk, or if the device is compliant, or the user location. For instance, it is trying to read the signal where the user at a time it is able to detect from the India location or also from the UK location. So a user cannot be in both the location, correct? So such signals will be detected easily. And so then if there is something wrong with such signals, then it will not give access to it, the sign-in will be aborted. Then the privilege identity management, you can give the just-in-time access. For instance, even in only for a few hours or till the task is done, then the access is given. After that, the access is revoked. And information sensitivity labels, coming back to it, where you are restricting the access. For some features, you can restrict the access even after the access is granted. For instance, if the content is sensitive, even when you have access, you need to go via various approval to access that particular file. So such restrictions are imposed here. So how do we explore this identity and access management? So here, if you go to this Microsoft Entra, as I said, so here the conditional access and the identity score, secure score, and the PAM, they all form these are all the core services in the Entra ID. But out of these, the conditional access, identity security score, and the PAM, they form the backbone of the 365 zero security model. So as usual, what I said, conditional access, they tailor the access decision based on the real-time identity. So you need to prove your identity and the context, and only then the access will be granted. So here, based on the risk-based policies, we could enforce the MFA, the multi-factor authentication, and the geographical restrictions. For instance, if you are you are traveling to your client place, for instance, outside India, assume, and if you're trying to access from UK, okay, then it will enable you, it will bring the MFA into picture here. So if it is from a familiar location, you can directly sign in. But if it is from a different location, which is not from a regular sign, then in that case, the MFA comes into picture, where it will have one more additional level of security check. So only if it is passed, then you will be able to you will be able to connect to the network there. Identity security score. So here you will have so many scores, like for instance, whether your device is compliant, whether this is a particular this particular exchange or the team's admin center is compliant, whether the security score is 50%. So all this we can set. So based on the security score, it provides the recommendation and the improvement. So what would happen? That will reduce the exposure to identity threats. So that is what the security score does. Then the privilege access management. Then what is privilege access management? You have access, but not always. It is like that. So like for instance, if you want to access something, a sensitive file, then it has to go via various approvals. And also a time-bound access can be given. You will be given access only for 4 hours. If you want to have access up after 4 hours, again, you need to raise a request. And all these reviews, and there will be a log. So when this particular file was accessed, who has accessed this, all this will reduce the risk of privilege misuse and compromise. So these are all the features which restrict the actions, which restrict the access even after the access is granted. So this is how we explore the identity and access management in Microsoft Entra. So what is the way to troubleshoot and monitor the identity security? So it is both. It requires, like for instance, it is you should not only have one of the skills. You should also have the technical knowledge and the investigative skills. For instance, if there is an alert for a particular file is accessed at a particular time for email by more number of users, then it is something alarming. So you need to have the investigative skills. So why it is that why it is being accessed, who accessed it, the technical knowledge also you should have. So admin must be able to in this. So this Microsoft 365 Copilot admin module, what it gives the comfortability to navigate across the Microsoft Entra or the Defender and the audit log. So we can pinpoint what are all the root causes and apply the fixes, or we can also stop further threats across which is moving across the system. So here the applications, they introduce the identity and security challenges if it is not managed. For instance, if it is not up to the date, if your application is not up to the date, or if the proper security policy is not applied on the application, then there is a more risk of security here. Then it also should be registered to authenticate and integrate with Microsoft 365. So usually what are all the issues we will regularly face? User will be blocked during the MFA because the device, the MSA in the policy has identified that the user login is from a different location. So unless and until he proves himself that he is an authenticated user, the access will be blocked. And so if it is from a different location, different IP addresses. So if the IP address is not as a regular IP address for that particular user, then even that log can be tracked. So at the end of the day, we can track what are all the irregular IP addresses what has been used to access the application. So in this way, we can use the secure authenticated methods, and we can comply with the organization security policy using the MFA enforcement. So here, let us walk through the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. So coming back to this, so I am in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So here, if you see, these are all the admin centers we have, and this is the Entra ID admin center here. So if you don't remember the URL or the link, how to log into the Entra ID center, no worries. Just log on to the Microsoft 365 admin center, and from there you have access to all the admin centers for which you have access. So here you will be able to see what are all the information, and here what are all the users we have who has access to this particular admin, and what are all the audit logs, who logged in, and if there is any access, if there is an update of the user, and even the signing logs also. When was this? When the user has recently signed in, what time, and whether for which application, because we have various applications, right? Power Platform admin we have, then Purview, then SharePoint. So all the sign-in logs can be tracked here. And if there is anything which we need to raise with the Microsoft, then it is also possible. And if there is a failed sign-ins, so if there are signing attempts with the wrong password, then even that also can be tracked. And so here it will give you an overview of what are all the audit logs or the sign-in logs for that particular user. It can be tracked here. And what are all the devices being used? So if there are any devices which are trying to connect to this Entra, to the Microsoft 365, which are not compliant, all this can be tracked here. So for instance, there are how the device settings should be done, Microsoft joining, whether users may join devices to Entra, and all this can be done. Even for this, you have an activity log. And here we have app registration. As you know, the app registration, it gives you the access to give, for instance, via to a particular Microsoft service. For instance, if you want access to the Microsoft Graph, all this can be done via the Microsoft app registration. So it gives you an authentication. You are going to authenticate whether this is a correct user who is trying to connect to the system. So, and you can set the certificate also, the secret also, which will be expired once after a particular time, and you need to renew it. So these are all the app registration. We regularly use it from the Dynamics 365 perspective. We regularly use it for during the integration scenarios, or when the user has to exchange the data. So this app registration comes into picture there. And if there is anything on the ID governance, here you can have what are the access reviews. All this can also be seen here. Here I don't have access. The reason being I haven't enabled that specific license for this accessing this identity governance. So if you want, you can enable that license. At least, so what I am suggesting is get used to all these nodes in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. So you can relate it with the theory, what is being given in the courseware. So in that way, you can easily correlate it, and when you are going for the exam, it will be easy for you to remember all this rather than theory. If you give a hands-on with this particular the site, then it will be easy for you to remember. Going back to our slide, so here we have given an overview of the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. And so what we covered? So we covered the zero trust, and we also covered the threat protection and intelligence, and we also covered the identity and authentication, and we covered the access and permission and identity and access management. How do you troubleshoot and monitor the identity security? So all this we covered in this module 2. Then the last module is in that learning path is protect and govern the data. So as soon as you get this word protect and govern the data, so what does it come to your mind? Of course, the purview. So what is this purview? So here comes the purview. So if you see here, I have shown you the purview admin center there. So it is not a single tool, as I said. It is a set of tools. It helps the organization to manage their data across the Microsoft 365 and other cloud hybrid environments. Either it can support for even cloud or for the hybrid environments, it will be able to give the manage the data. For instance, it will give the information protection. It will protect the information. Data loss prevention, where it can stop the user from sending the data across without any proper approvals, or if it is a high security, high sensitive data. Then insider risk management, then communication compliance, then also the risk data security, posture management, and data lifecycle management. So here the data governance tools in the purview, it ensures that the data is accurate and it is consistent and it is appropriately managed across the life cycle. Because what do you mean by the life cycle? For instance, here the data, the file, it will be used throughout this particular financial year. So this need not be used in the next financial year. So there comes the life cycle, whether this can be archived or it can be deleted. So if it has to be archived, so which is the best way to archive it? So all this will be suggested here. And then it also gives the sensitive labels and the information protection. And it also gives the data lifecycle management. So how to identify and respond to data risk with the Microsoft Purview. So Microsoft Purview, it enables to detect the data by analyzing the signals. So it will have various signals. For instance, all these logs, they are signals. So if there is an elevated risk, for instance, the DLP policy, somehow it is at the elevated risk, immediately block it. So it is everything is a signal. It works on the signal by analyzing the data. It will detect, okay, hey, this is the signal. Okay, then this data seems to be at risk. So let us not give the access, immediately block it. And so for this, how does it do? It has a set of tools and it provides the visibility and the controls across the Microsoft 365. So what are all the tools? The tools are the insider risk management, the data loss protection, then the communication compliance, this activity explorer. So via these tools, it will easily identify, it can read the signal and understand if there is a threat. So they provide like an early indicator of governance risk through the policy alerts. For instance, you can monitor the risk signals, You can identify if there is a exfiltration prompts. It is trying to get, the prompt is given by the user where it is asking for some sensitive data. And if there is a policy violation, you would have defined some policy. So if the policy is violated, so what should we do? And if there is a sudden spike in accessing the sensitive data, for instance, there is a file which has the financial report of a particular organization. So suddenly there is a spike in accessing that particular file. Why is it so? So all this activity can be detected by the Microsoft Purview. So this is how, these are all the tools which are used by the Purview to read these signals. And what happens when you overshare the data? So for instance, least privilege is always applied here. So if you overshare the data, for instance, when the oversharing occurs, when the users are granted broader access to the SharePoint. And for instance, a user, we have all the documents stored in the SharePoint, right? So if the user is granted access to the SharePoint, then the appropriate one, with more access, like broader access, then it should not be a sharing with everyone or anyone with this link. So such access, usually what we will do, we will share by default, it will be sharing with everyone, right? So in this case, you need to make sure the data is not shared to a broader set, but only to a particular set of people. And we don't need to provide the edit access. Should we need edit access for this particular user group? No, a normal view access is enough. And also allowing the guest users the full site access. So you should not allow the guest users with the full site access. So to whichever the particular path, what is to be accessed, to be given access, only for that the guest users should be given. So in this case, there are these are all the key tools and techniques to prevent the oversharing that include, for instance, the PowerShell and the Microsoft API, then automated audits and alerts, so sharing reports. So these are all the tools which would help you to prevent the oversharing, and also apply the sensitivity label and whenever you want. For instance, if you see this particular scenario, there is a file with payment information. Okay, it is a broader access, and you can classify a file with this type of risk. It is a high risk, medium risk, or a low risk. So sudden access, there is a spike in access, and this is a sensitive data. So what should the Purview do in this case? It will immediately highlight it as high risk, remediate it, and it will block the access. Then using the signals, whatever it receives, then it will immediately take action on it. So how do you enable the data protection? So we should always obey the security policies here. Like what data we should understand, the admins has to understand what data the Microsoft Copilot can access and they cannot access, and how the admins can audit and control its behavior. So usually the Copilot operates entirely within the Microsoft Purview compliance boundaries. So it doesn't transmit the data outside the tenant or to any non-Microsoft server. That is how the Copilot it operates. It doesn't send any data outside the tenant or to non-Microsoft services here. And Microsoft Graph is also a centralized data. I will be explaining what the Microsoft Graph role is in the coming slides. So using the Microsoft Graph, it also gives it acts as a centralized data layer for the entire Microsoft 365 system. So for instance, when the Copilot receives a user prompt, so it then sends the query to the Microsoft Graph, and the Microsoft Graph takes these into account. For instance, user contacts the token. For instance, what are all the contextual filters are there or not? Then it will do the data minimization, and it will also bring the following policies here. For instance, what are all the policies? Content filtering is there, auditability, or the transparency, and whether the data minimization, not all the data which is outside the scope of that particular user should not be given. So all these are all taken into picture. So when you submit a prompt, these are all evaluated here. So that is how the data is protected in Microsoft 365. So what we covered the Microsoft Purview and the data governance, and how the data risk management is in the Microsoft Purview, and the oversharing, and the data access governance in the SharePoint, and the data protection in D365. That is the data protection in 365 in Microsoft 365. So I hope we have come to the end of the session. Let me know if there are any questions which I can help you. Maybe, or you can even post it in the chat later, where Jeevan or Dharani will be able to communicate to me, and I can answer the questions whichever you have. Thank you, Jeevan. Thank you, Dharani.
Thank you, Anita. It's a very excited session, and it's a useful information. I think this will help the attendees, including myself, to prepare for the exam and then give our best. I'm sure the attendees will be able. This will help attendees to clear the exam and get the certification. And again, thanks again for your presenting the session at short notice. And again, thanks everyone for joining today. Whoever joined whoever will be watching this session later, please note that there will be a follow-up other session on February 27th. That's on another exam. What is that one, Anita?
AB 730.
That's AB 730. So please keep an eye on that as well. We'll be publishing that details in our meetup, and and so that you can join and get more useful information for that exam as well. And thank you so much, Anita, again joining.
Thank you.
Early morning in UK, I know that, and I really appreciate for accommodating this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeevan. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.